The tag of, and here I won't need help because crony capitalist is something which we all understand, especially for the last 7 years, it has been very clear. The tag of crony capitalists is the one which will not leave this government in a hurry. And why is this tag stuck on this government? For the simple reason that the Prime Minister and this government and his party do everything under the sun and openly do it, shamelessly do it, brazenly do it, to show it to the world and the country that this government is for crony capitalists, by crony capitalists, and of crony capitalists. I won't call them businessmen, I won't call them industrialists, because that would be an insult to the lakhs and lakhs of hard-working industrialists and businessmen who are the spine of our economy. I won't even call this gentleman who I'm about to mention Baba, Swami, Guru, no, because that would be an insult to our civilization. These are people who misuse their proximity with the Prime Minister, and the Prime Minister allows, encourages, abets this misuse. It involves your money, my money. It involves our public sector banks, in which your and my hard-earned money is there. That misuse is encouraged, abetted by the Prime Minister of India. Let's start the story. In 2017, a private company by the name of Ruchi Soya filed for insolvency, which was then approved in the same year, September of 2017, by NCLT. The company had taken loans amounting to 12,146 crore rupees. Several banks. Banks started making claims for those loans. The exposure of SBI, Punjab National Bank, and other banks, total, as I said, amounted to 12,146 crores. The largest lender to Ruchi Soya was SBI. The amount was 1,816 crore rupees. That was the largest exposure. When the time came for settlement of these loans, SBI could only settle 883 crore of their claims, foregoing 993 crores, almost 1,000 crore. So, by settling 883 crores out of 1,816 crore, the bank settled 43.6% of the total loan given to Ruchi Soya. That's mostly the story of all the other banks which had exposure to Ruchi Soya. So after Ruchi Soya went in for insolvency, there were two bidders in the market who were willing to bid for Ruchi Soya. Obviously, the two were Patanjali and Adani Wilmar. So after the process of bidding ended, Patanjali took Ruchi Soya for 4,350 crore rupees. To fund this, now this is a twist in the tape. To fund this takeover by Patanjali of Ruchi Soya, Patanjali took loans of 3,250 crores. How much did Patanjali buy Ruchi Soya for? 4,350 crores. To buy this, Patanjali took loans from the banks worth 3,250 crores. The bulk of this 3,250 crore was taken from SBI. Now that's the twist in the tape. A public sector bank which has credibility, which is more or less India's identity, our economy's identity. It's the backbone of our banking sector. Why is it that first the SBI foregoes 993 crore rupees, then the SBI lends more money to Patanjali, which has, in terms of ICRA ratings, very, very minimal ICRA ratings. Yet SBI gives them a loan of 1,200 crore rupees. So 2,100, 2,200 crores, less than 2,200 crores, is the burden on SBI, is the burden on you and me. Why? What is significant here to note is that first SBI writes off under this atmosphere where NPAs are making news, where we have been talking, the country has been talking about, lamenting about NPAs, SBI takes a hit, not one hit, but two hits. We'll all are, obviously you and I will start wondering what is happening. What is the pressure on SBI to fund Patanjali's investment in Ruchi Soya? Which banking principle allows a bank that had to write off loans to a particular company to again fund the buying of the same company by issuing more loans? What is that banking? Under whose advice, whose insistence, whose direction, whose threat, whose arm twisting was this done? Because initially, SBI was not keen on funding Patanjali for this takeover. What happened? Yes, of course, there was a random remark by the Honorable Finance Minister that banks should support groups which are headed by spiritual leaders. It would be unfair on my part to just blame the Finance Minister. Because we all know that this is a cabinet of puppets. This is a government of puppets. There is one man who controls everything. Actually, there are two, but in this case, there's one man who controls everything. Mr. Modi. So let's question him. Look at the business model of Ramdev ji. As I said, I won't call him Swamiji, Guruji or Babaji because I revere the Swamis, the Gurus and the Sadhus of my country, my civilization. So Ramdev ji's business model is fascinating. Within 5 months of acquiring Ruchi Soya, the valuation of the shares went up by 8,929% from 17 rupees to 1,535 rupees. Within 5 months. A company whose valuation in 2019 was 4,350 rupees, crore rupees, is now worth 35,360 crores. Now tell me, if we hypothetically were to demand, let's change the finance minister. She hasn't been able to do much. Of course, she has succeeded in sinking our economy. Let's try and do something in the remaining 3 years of this government. Let's make this gentleman Ramdev ji as our finance minister. Union Finance Minister Ramdev. Sounds good to the ears. And we can have Jai Shah as his MOS. Look at the exponential rise. Maybe they'll be able to do something for our economy. Is this an unfair demand to make, I ask you? After all, miracles happen. Maybe they can come and do some miracle to our economy, the way they've done it to their own economy. So, if this is what could be achieved by Ramdev ji, that banks surrender, everybody surrenders, shares go up, valuation goes up, obviously there will be some questions, because one important thing that the government did, it didn't stop here. It helped Ramdev ji. And then once the takeover happened, the government announced restriction of import of palm oil. Now that one decision, and the shares went rocketing high. That one decision helped Ramdev ji and Ruchi Soya the way no other company has been helped by no other government. Look at the way crony capitalists flourish under this government. Look at the way wherever, in whichever economy, crony capitalism flourishes, the economy nosedives. And that's what is happening right there in front of our eyes. So there will be some questions that we'll ask based on the facts that I just read out. Why did banks, and that too public sector banks, and that too a bank like SBI, for instance, why did they settle at 43.6% of the total loans they had given to Ruchi Soya. With the already worsening NPA scenario, did this not put additional burden, additional pressure on our banks and on each one of us? Because it's our money. What forced a bank like SBI, or who forced a bank like SBI to undo their own decision to fund Patanjali to take over Ruchi Soya? What was the pressure? Patanjali has a very, very low credit rating given by ICRA. Despite this, why did banks let Patanjali be the acquirer of Ruchi Soya, fund Patanjali, and put themselves at a heightened risk and exposure? Again, twice for the same company. Why? These are questions that need to be answered. SBI had, as I said, initially denied. What happened then that SBI had to then go back on its decision? Ruchi Soya has debts amounting to over 12,000 crore rupees, yet it was bought for a mere 4,000 crore rupees. Today it's valued at 36,360 crores. What did the banks get out of this entire deal of Ruchi Soya? This is an important question. The pace at which the shares shot up, the actions of the government, the decisions to restrict palm oil import, these are decisions that need to be thoroughly, independently investigated and action taken on whoever it is who allowed this to happen or who gave instructions to take these decisions.